Yeah, well, but I liked you right away
Did he tell you that I had said that you should...
That we should make out?
Well, no, it was after that. I just looked at the show and I said,
No.
She is really, really good.
Warren Beatty is 88 years old, and after decades of silence, he's finally talking. For real this time. Hollywood's most mysterious icon is pulling back the curtain on his wild past and deep regrets. They say he dated over 12,000 women. You read that right, but only tied the knot once. Behind that charming grin and smooth talk, he's been hiding one story for years. A story about the woman he can't forget. And no, it's not his wife, not Madonna, and not Diane Keaton. This one will leave you speechless. She's the woman who shattered his heart back in 1974 and changed everything for him. Now he's revealing who she is and why he still calls her his biggest mistake, even after all these years. Warren Beatty came into the world on March 30th, 1937, in Richmond, Virginia. Born Henry Warren Beatty, he grew up in a tight-knit family where faith ruled the home. The Beattys were rooted in Baptist tradition, holding order and respect as sacred, even as they moved from one town to another. His mother, Catherine, taught drama at a local high school. Imagine the energy in that house. Lines, scripts, and rehearsals filled their living room, and her passion for theater quietly rubbed off on young Warren. His father, Ira, was a serious, detail-oriented psychologist and educator, always focused and calm, guiding the family through life in Richmond, Norfolk, and finally Arlington. Even his grandparents from Nova Scotia, also teachers, brought their own rhythm to the home, blending intellect with warmth. It was a household of rules, books, and unexpected bursts of creativity. By the time little Warren could walk, the stage was already calling him. He wasn't loud or showy. He watched, listened, studied every move, then imitated it perfectly. That quiet observation would soon make him one of Hollywood's most fascinating stars. He'd spend hours tucked away in corners, quietly copying Milton Berle and Al Jolson. No audience, no applause, just him and his imagination. While other kids were out playing, Warren was building characters in secret, studying every gesture, every tone, perfecting the art long before he ever stepped into a spotlight. All those family moves turned out to be his secret training ground. Each new school forced him to adapt fast, to read people, to understand who was in charge and how to fit in without being noticed. No matter where they landed, he kept his little world of impressions close, almost like a hidden treasure he didn't want anyone to touch. Then came the 1950 re-release of the Philadelphia story, and the movie hit him like lightning. It wasn't just a film, it was a message. Something inside him shifted at Washington Lee High School in Arlington, where he suddenly changed course. Football took over his focus, and by senior year, he was the golden boy, star quarterback, leading his team to victory after victory, with crowds roaring his name. But Beatty wasn't just an athlete, he was also class president, pulling solid grades and collecting college offers like trophies. 10 schools came knocking with football scholarships, but his eyes were on something completely different. His sister, Shirley MacLaine, was already lighting up Broadway, and her success made him restless. Her spotlight made him want his own, but not in the same way, so he shocked everyone. He turned down every scholarship, walked away from football, and chased something bigger, something that couldn't be measured in touchdowns or trophies. In 1954, he headed to Northwestern University, joined Sigma Chi, and dove into liberal arts. But it didn't last. The rules, the routine, the structure, it all bored him senseless. After just 1 year, he dropped out, following a calling that was louder than any coach's whistle. By 1955, acting had him completely hooked. He'd been spending summers backstage at the National Theater in D.C., hauling props, fixing lights, soaking up everything he could about the craft. His father, even with a Ph.D. and a strict academic mindset, didn't stop him, not once. Instead, he told Warren that maybe quitting school wasn't failure at all. Maybe it was a sign that he was meant for something different, something bigger. Warren did return to Northwestern for a quick minute in 1956, just to perform in a campus production, but deep down he already knew the truth. His real classroom wasn't in a lecture hall. It was waiting for him miles away in the chaos of New York City. At just 18, he packed his bags, headed to the West Side, and moved into a tiny apartment that barely held a bed. He lived on peanut butter sandwiches and pure determination. He studied under the legendary Stella Adler, a woman who molded legends. But survival meant hustle. So he scrubbed dishes, played piano in smoky bars across Long Island, and even worked deep underground in Manhattan's tunnels as a sandhog. Every job toughened him up. Every long shift carved out the grit that would later define him. By 22, his grind finally paid off. He landed his first real television role. Everything changed almost overnight. His debut came on Studio One in the episode The Night America Trembled, which aired live on September 9th, 1957. He was only 19, and even though it was just a small background role, it was enough to get Hollywood whispering. Studio One wasn't just any show. It had launched names like James Dean and Grace Kelly. From there, the doors kept opening. Kraft Television Theater, Playhouse 90, and soon, The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. Each role was another step toward stardom. These weren't just credits. They were training sessions, sharpening his instincts, his timing, his presence. And then came 1958, a turning point. Warren Beatty stepped onto the stage in A Loss of Roses, and suddenly he wasn't just another ambitious kid anymore. He was a star in the making. The play A Loss of Roses didn't last long, but Warren's performance, it lit up the room. Director Joshua Logan saw something electric in him and immediately set up a screen test at MGM in 1959. And that test changed everything. MGM signed the young actor to a massive 7-year contract at $1,000 a week, a fortune for someone just 22 years old. That same year, while filming The Roman Spring of Mrs. Stone, Warren met the stunning Joan Collins, and sparks flew instantly. The two began dating, and before long, Beatty packed his things and headed straight for Hollywood. But that MGM contract wasn't just about money. It was a bet on his future, and Warren went all in. Then came Splendor in the Grass in 1961, his explosive film debut. He played Bud Stamper opposite Natalie Wood, and the role was anything but simple. Beatty clashed with director Elia Kazan over the script, demanding more depth, more truth, more raw emotion. He fought for scene rewrites, insisted on extra takes, sometimes even third takes. He wasn't afraid to challenge anyone if it meant making the story real. Some critics called him difficult. Others saw something else entirely, a perfectionist chasing truth in every frame. The movie, set in 1920s Kansas, dove deep into teenage love and mental breakdowns, topics that were still taboo at the time. Beatty refused to sugarcoat it. He didn't want glamour. He wanted honesty. Then came a choice that would set the tone for the rest of his career. In 1963, Warren Beatty shocked Hollywood by turning down the lead in PT 109, the patriotic biopic about JFK's heroism during World War II. Everyone said it was a guaranteed blockbuster, but Warren wasn't swayed by fame or flag-waving glory. Instead, he chose All Fall Down, playing a lost drifter in a film that critics praised but audiences skipped. That decision defined him. He wasn't chasing hits. He was chasing meaning. Every project had to challenge him, shake him, make him feel something real. And that same fiery spirit followed him straight into Lilith, where things would get even more complicated. In 1964, Warren Beatty took things to a whole new level when he starred in Lilith, playing a staffer at a mental asylum, a role that blurred the line between acting and obsession. He dove in deep, studying psychology late into the night and staying in character even when the cameras stopped rolling. It wasn't just method acting, it was transformation. But that intensity came with whispers. Rumors swirled about an affair with his co-star, Kim Hunter. He never confirmed a thing, but Hollywood couldn't stop talking. Suddenly, people weren't just calling him a talented actor. They were calling him unpredictable, dangerous. He wasn't just playing his roles anymore. He was living them. Then came The Roman Spring of Mrs. Stone, where he starred opposite the legendary Vivian Leigh as a seductive young gigolo. Behind the glamour, things took a darker turn. Lee, battling bipolar disorder, became emotionally tangled with Beatty, and later he admitted carrying guilt about it. He said she was vulnerable and that he hadn't handled things the right way. After filming, her health began to spiral and her hospitalizations became more frequent. Beatty's magnetic charm, the same quality that made him irresistible on screen, started showing a sharper, more reckless edge off screen. By 1966, during Promise Her Anything, that edge turned into full-blown chaos. Beatty butted heads constantly with director Arthur Hiller, rewriting his own lines, ignoring cues, and holding up production for nearly 3 weeks. And while all that was happening, he was also entangled with co-star Leslie Caron, who described him as magnetic but exhausting. Crew members backed her up, calling him brilliant but impossible to control. Beatty wasn't just the leading man. He was the storm that came with every film he touched. Even his romance with Natalie Wood, which began back in 1959, couldn't survive his growing reputation. By 1962, it was over. And when she found out about his flings with Joan Collins, it ended in heartbreak and fire. Natalie Wood was shattered. Friends said she once screamed that he was everything to her. And in 1962, her heartbreak hit a terrifying low when she reportedly attempted suicide. Later, when Beatty tried convincing her to star in Bonnie and Clyde, she agreed, but admitted she felt cornered by him. That emotional history bled into their work, creating real tension on set, a storm of love, regret, and unfinished business that made the story even darker. The gossip never stopped circling them. By 1963, Beatty was offered the lead in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but he shocked everyone by turning it down. He didn't want to be typecast as another Hollywood rebel. He wanted to break the mold. Instead, he took on Mickey 1 in 1965, an experimental, surreal film where he played a paranoid stand-up comedian spiraling into madness. He threw himself into the role completely. No boundaries, no breaks. Crew members said he stayed in character non-stop, barely spoke to anyone, and even isolated himself for days. His intensity made people uncomfortable, like they were watching a man slowly fall apart for real. The movie bombed at the box office, but critics couldn't ignore his haunting performance. Hollywood was confused. Was Warren Beatty a genius, or was he losing it? Then in 1967, things took a new turn when he met the dazzling Julie Christie while filming McCabe and Mrs. Miller. He cast her as his on-screen love interest, and soon life imitated art. They fell deeply for each other, and their romance stretched over 7 dramatic years, filled with passion, betrayals, and endless makeups and breakups. Beatty proposed more than once, but commitment was never his strong suit. He kept seeing other women, including Goldie Hawn. Julie Christie later confessed that he was the love of her life, but also the source of her deepest pain. Their relationship was pure Hollywood drama. Every headline, every whisper, every heartbreak, and the magazines devoured it all. Just like Warren Beatty's love life, his films were pure fire. Passion and chaos tangled together with no clean break between the two. When Bonnie and Clyde hit production in 1967, the studio had zero faith in it. They thought it would flop hard. Instead of paying him a flat fee, they offered him 40% of the film's gross, a gamble they assumed wouldn't pay off. They hated everything. The violence, the sexuality, even the French New Wave influence running through the script. But Beatty stood his ground and refused to back down. What came out of that rebellion was a $2.5 million film that went on to rake in more than $70 million worldwide, a box office earthquake that rewrote movie history. That now iconic bloody ending, it was a cinematic revolution. Over 50 sharp edits in under a single minute. Legendary editor Dee Dee Allen fought for that shocking finale so fiercely, she stormed out of the edit room twice. But director Arthur Penn wouldn't budge. He knew they were making something that would break the rules forever. That final shootout didn't just end a movie, it ended an era. It smashed the old Hollywood system wide open and gave birth to the gritty, daring style of New Hollywood. Beatty wasn't just the star. He was the visionary, the producer, the gambler who risked everything to make it happen. His instincts paid off big time, earning him his first Oscar nomination and cementing his place as one of Hollywood's boldest risk-takers. But behind the curtain, casting was a battlefield. Natalie Wood refused to play Bonnie. Too much history with Beatty. Jane Fonda and Carol Lynley were considered, and Tuesday Weld had to drop out after getting pregnant. That's when newcomer Faye Dunaway came charging in, begging for a meeting with director Arthur Penn. Beatty initially didn't want her billed as his equal until he saw her perform. One screen test, and he knew she wasn't just his co-star, she was dynamite. Faye Dunaway fought like hell to be taken seriously, and she proved everyone wrong. Her fierce, fearless performance turned Bonnie and Clyde into an instant classic, earning her an Oscar nomination and blasting her straight into superstardom. But while the film was making history, off-screen tensions were starting to boil. During the movie's promotional tour, Beatty began seeing French actress Michelle Philippe, a whirlwind romance that seemed to calm him down for once. But tragedy struck in 1977 when she was killed in a sudden car crash at just 28 years old. The loss wrecked him. Beatty later admitted her death haunted him for years, saying it deepened the guilt he carried as he drifted from one relationship to another, never really healing from the pain. Bonnie and Clyde didn't just make headlines, it shattered the old Hollywood rule book. The film tore straight through the Hays Code, the strict censorship laws that once dictated what could and couldn't be shown on screen. From Bonnie's subtle gun stroking to the bloody robberies and the violent, unforgettable finale, critics were outraged. Some even called it pornographic, claiming it glorified chaos. Beatty defended it with passion, saying it captured the rebellion and unrest of the 1960s, a generation done with pretending. But behind closed doors, he was stirring up his own kind of controversy. Late-night script readings turned into flirtation sessions, blurring the lines between work and romance, especially with Faye Dunaway and others. The film's public scandal only fueled the gossip, making Beatty's private life as explosive as his career. A few years later, he jumped into The Only Game in Town in 1970, a high-stakes drama that paired him with the one and only Elizabeth Taylor. Beatty earned $750,000 for the role, while Taylor pocketed a jaw-dropping $1.25 million. The movie was shot mostly in Paris because Taylor refused to leave Richard Burton's side. What was supposed to be a sleek 86-day shoot stretched into nearly 100 days after Beatty demanded endless reshoots, obsessed with perfecting scenes and watching every one of Taylor's moves. Beatty grew paranoid on the set of The Only Game in Town, convinced Richard Burton might be meddling from the sidelines. But despite all the drama, the movie crashed hard, pulling in just $4.5 million when it needed nearly $20 million to break even. It ended up losing 20th Century Fox a painful $7.5 million. After that humiliation, Beatty stepped back from Hollywood to throw himself into politics, backing George McGovern's 1972 presidential campaign. But he couldn't stay away for long. When he returned, it was with The Parallax View in 1974, a tense political thriller dripping with paranoia and Watergate-era rage. Fired up by the Nixon scandal, Beatty wanted the film to blur the line between fact and fiction, and he went all in. Real news clips from Watergate were cut right into the story, giving it a chilling realism. But halfway through production, chaos hit again. Beatty fired director Alan Pakula and took the reins himself. The crew was stunned. The release was delayed, but when it finally hit theaters in June 1974, right as the Watergate drama exploded in real life, audiences couldn't look away. Critics were divided, calling it cold and unsettling, but the movie's sense of paranoia stuck with people long after the credits rolled. Beatty's bold decision to take control left a permanent mark. He was now not just an actor, but a force who wouldn't let anyone else steer the vision. Then came Shampoo in 1975, and this one blurred the lines between fiction and reality more than ever. Beatty played a smooth-talking, womanizing hairdresser. Basically a mirror image of himself. He cast his ex, Julie Christie, and his then-girlfriend, Michelle Phillips, turning the set into a real-life tangle of passion and tension. And to add even more chaos, he got flirty with a teenage Carrie Fisher during filming, a move that would later spark major controversy and criticism. Fisher later said she wasn't interested, while Beatty joked otherwise. The set turned into a soap opera of egos, emotions, and entanglements. Everyone watching everyone, on screen and off. The tension on Shampoo wasn't just acting. It was Warren Beatty's real life collapsing in on itself. By the late 70s, his world was spinning fast, but he wasn't done taking risks. In 1978, he went all in again with Heaven Can Wait, a fantasy comedy that turned into one of his biggest gambles yet. The film cost a massive $20 million to make, packed with elaborate football sequences, lavish sets, and Beatty's perfectionist vision stamped all over it. He co-directed alongside Buck Henry, but then secretly rewrote nearly 70% of the script without even telling him. When Henry found out, he was furious. He said it felt like Beatty hijacked the film. Still, despite all the behind-the-scenes drama, Heaven Can Wait became a smash hit, racking up 4 Oscar nominations and earning Beatty another Hollywood comeback. But that creative partnership, it was over for good. Then came his most ambitious project ever, Reds. By the early 1980s, Beatty was consumed by it. The obsession had started years earlier in the early 70s when he became fascinated by the life of journalist and revolutionary John Reed. Beatty dove in with insane dedication, interviewing over 100 people across the Soviet Union to get every detail right. The passion turned costly. Production was delayed for years as the budget ballooned to a jaw-dropping $32 million. Beatty even sold his Beverly Hills mansion just to keep the movie alive. He filmed across 4 countries, used over 200 speaking roles, and refused to cut even a second from its massive 195-minute runtime. The set was chaos. Extras protested over low pay, actors were pushed through 80 takes per scene, and the cameras kept rolling long past schedule. But when Reds finally premiered, it became a critical triumph. At the Oscars, Beatty won Best Director, and in one shocking moment, he publicly thanked Julie Christie, calling her the love of his life, right in front of his wife, Annette Bening. The film earned 12 nominations, but lost Best Picture to Chariots of Fire. Still, Beatty had proven he was more than a Hollywood playboy. He was an unstoppable visionary. Even Jack Nicholson almost walked off the set during the madness of Reds. The production was pure chaos, and emotions were boiling over. At the same time, Warren Beatty was tangled in a messy love story of his own, his relationship with Diane Keaton, which had started back in 1976. She played Louise Bryant, the real-life partner of John Reed, Beatty's character, and their chemistry on screen was electric, but behind the camera, it was crumbling fast. Keaton discovered he was cheating again, this time with his old flame, Julie Christie. Their 5-year relationship unraveled right before the film's premiere. Later, Diane described it as bittersweet, thrilling, but painfully exhausting. The heartbreak didn't stop there, though. Beatty's rumored fling with Goldie Hawn only made things worse. When Keaton reportedly found love letters from another woman in his trailer, the atmosphere on set turned ice cold. Even veteran actress Maureen Stapleton, who went on to win Best Supporting Actress for her role, lost her patience after endless retakes. She finally snapped at Beatty, yelling, "I'm not a machine!" That's how relentless he was. Still, despite all the drama, Reds raked in $40 million worldwide, becoming one of the biggest box office successes of 1981. Its bold left-wing message hit hard, echoing Beatty's earlier political activism from his George McGovern campaign in 1972. He poured his ideals straight into the film. Every frame was charged with his belief that art could shake the system. Then came 1990, and Beatty's next colossal gamble, Dick Tracy. The project was a beast, costing $47 million to make and another $54 million just for marketing. He cast Madonna as the seductive, breathless Mahoney, and then reportedly fell for her during auditions. The press went wild. Headlines exploded, gossip spread like wildfire, and even Al Pacino, who co-starred, allegedly confronted Beatty over the chaos on set. The production felt like a battlefield. studio execs breathing down his neck, cameras rolling non-stop, and marketing stunts that included wild 1-900 number contests giving away vintage cars. It wasn't just a movie anymore. It was a circus with Beatty at the center of the storm. Dick Tracy pulled in over $100 million, but its legacy wasn't just box office gold, it was drenched in tabloid chaos. The press couldn't get enough of Warren Beatty and Madonna's rumored affair, and every headline kept his name burning hot in Hollywood. Then, just a year later, came Bugsy, and this time the drama turned real. On set, Beatty met Annette Bening, and sparks flew instantly. He proposed on the third day of filming on Talk About Fast. The two married and went on to have 4 kids between 1992 and 1999, marking what looked like a new, more grounded chapter in his wild life. But even then, the ghosts of his past kept creeping in. He once told Bening that their chemistry wasn't like what he had with Julie Christie, a comment that said more than he probably intended. Beatty had skipped The Godfather back in 1972 to take on Bugsy Siegel instead, a move that shocked everyone at the time. To prepare, he dove deep, meeting real mobsters and studying Siegel's vision for Las Vegas with obsessive focus. That passion paid off. Bugsy snagged 10 Oscar nominations and revived his image. Marriage, kids, critical success, it looked like Warren Beatty had finally settled down. But the cracks were still there. Then came Bulworth in 1998, and it blew up every expectation. It was wild, political, and unapologetically risky, a satire wrapped in hip-hop swagger. Beatty pushed boundaries again, but the backlash was fierce. The NAACP slammed it for racial stereotyping, forcing Beatty to rewrite and reshoot huge portions, adding another $5 million to its already $30 million budget. The controversy swallowed the praise, even though the movie scored an Oscar nomination for Best Original Screenplay. Still, the storm didn't end there. Beatty had famously turned down Forrest Gump in 1994, calling it too sentimental. Instead, he took on Ishtar in 1987, a choice that backfired in spectacular fashion. The film cost $55 million to make, but barely earned $14 million in the U.S., losing Columbia Pictures over $40 million. It became one of Hollywood's most infamous flops, and another wild chapter in the unpredictable saga of Warren Beatty. Filming Ishtar in the scorching Sahara turned into total chaos. Director Elaine May struggled to keep control, and the production spiraled into one of Hollywood's biggest nightmares. But somehow, Warren Beatty still walked away with a cool $5 million as producer, untouched financially, but his reputation, that took a beating. It was the kind of exit only a Hollywood heavyweight like him could pull off. Rich in money, but bruised in name. Fast forward a few decades, Beatty was 79 and ready for one last grand comeback. He'd been developing a project for over 30 years, and he was finally ready to release it. The film was Rules Don't Apply, and this time Beatty did it all. He wrote it, directed it, starred in it, and even bankrolled it himself. With a production budget sitting somewhere between $25 and $26.7 million, he was betting everything on one last big swing. But when it hit theaters on November 23rd, 2016, the dream collapsed fast. Opening weekend brought in just $1.6 million. A brutal number for a movie that had taken decades to make. Within 5 days, it had barely scraped together $2.2 million. By the third weekend, ticket sales had dropped a shocking 93%, and theaters started pulling it completely before the year was even over. When the dust settled, Rules Don't Apply had only earned $3.6 million worldwide, not even 14% of what it cost to make. To make matters worse, Beatty had insisted on a confusing 45-minute edit that left audiences scratching their heads. The result? One of the most devastating box office crashes in modern film history. And the fallout didn't stop there. In 2017, a lawsuit came knocking. Investors were demanding $18 million in damages, claiming massive financial losses from the flop. Then, in 2022, even more trouble hit when a civil suit was filed against Beatty under California's extended statute law, which allows old cases of alleged misconduct to be revisited. It was another dark twist in the long, unpredictable legacy of a man who once ruled Hollywood. The story took a devastating turn when in 2022, a woman came forward with serious allegations. She claimed that back in 1978, when she was only 14 or 15, Beatty, then around 35, had coerced her into sexual acts during the promotion of Heaven Can Wait. She described multiple incidents, saying he used his fame and influence to manipulate her trust. The claims sent shockwaves through Hollywood, reopening painful conversations about the darker side of the industry. Beatty never directly denied the allegations. Instead, his legal team argued that the case should be dismissed under California's statute of limitations, calling the law flawed. In 2023, the case was officially thrown out, not because the accusations were proven false, but because of a procedural block that ended it before it could ever go to trial. There was no courtroom battle, no testimony, and no resolution. Only silence. Beatty later issued a rare, carefully worded statement where he vaguely referred to past mistakes and youthful indiscretions, but it did little to calm the storm. After that, Beatty's retreat from the public eye deepened. He had already started disappearing from Hollywood after 2020, but by 2025, he was barely seen outside his Los Angeles home. A film he co-created with his wife, Annette Bening, The Women of the Castle, remains unreleased, even though insiders say it's been finished for years. Reportedly, Beatty refuses to move forward with it, avoiding meetings and skipping every major event. He even missed his daughter Ella's Broadway debut in 2025, a shocking absence that friends say marked a real turning point. Those close to him now describe him as fragile, withdrawn, and guarded. Some whisper about fading memory and confusion, while others insist he's simply protecting his privacy. But no matter the truth, the once golden legend seems trapped in the same lonely isolation he once portrayed so perfectly on screen, like when he played Howard Hughes, haunted by fame, regret, and ghosts of the past. Back in the early 70s, producer Charlie Bluedorn had offered Warren Beatty a golden opportunity, the chance to produce, write, or even direct The Godfather. But Beatty turned it down, saying the novel didn't feel like a film to him. That single decision would haunt him for decades. The Godfather went on to become one of the most successful movie franchises in history, earning over $1 billion worldwide. Beatty later admitted that skipping out on The Irishman in 2019 was another regret that stuck with him. Not because of the money, but because he knew he was running out of chances to make his mark again. Over the years, Beatty had turned down Superman, Boogie Nights' Jack Horner role, and a laundry list of other parts most actors would have given anything for. But control was everything to him. He wanted total creative power, and that stubborn streak often came with a heavy price. When he finally stepped back into the spotlight at the 2022 Oscars, audiences were stunned. The once commanding Hollywood icon appeared frail, his hands trembling as he struggled to get through his speech. The crowd gave him a standing ovation, but behind the applause was shock. Warren Beatty didn't look like the same man who once ruled the industry. After that brief appearance, he disappeared completely. By 2024, he skipped everything, even his daughter's big Broadway opening night. Friends whispered that he had retreated into his writing, working quietly on a script about his 1972 campaign for George McGovern, a political moment he had once called the most important experience of his life. But the silence around him grew heavier with time. There was no confirmed illness, no public statement, just endless speculation. Some said it was age catching up to him. Others suspected something deeper. His name still carried the weight of a Hollywood legend, but it also carried decades of scandal and myth. Beatty himself once joked that he'd been with over 12,000 women, and he mentioned it more than once, almost as if he was daring people to believe it. One of the wildest stories even tied him to a rumored 1970s encounter with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, a tale that's never been proven, but in true Beatty fashion, he never bothered denying it either. That wild rumor about Warren Beatty, Elizabeth Taylor, and Richard Burton tore through Hollywood like gasoline on fire. Some even whispered that it played a part in the couple's eventual divorce. though nothing was ever proven. Still, the fact that people believed it spoke volumes about Beatty's larger-than-life reputation. His name didn't just attract gossip, it created it. Then, in 2015, his infamous image collided with reality. A DNA test confirmed that Beatty had fathered a child with a co-star from the 1970s, a secret he had kept buried for decades. He never spoke about it publicly, and the situation was quietly settled behind closed doors. But the revelation hit his marriage hard. Annette Benning, his wife since 1992, reportedly stood by him, but only after they went through therapy to patch things up. The child's name never reached the press, but the story was a stark reminder that even the most private stars can't escape the shadows of their past. Despite his turbulent public persona, Beatty had always been intensely protective of his family. He and Benning raised 4 kids, Kathleen, Benjamin, Isabel, and Ella, keeping them far from the Hollywood spotlight. Still, by 2025, the cracks in that privacy began to show. When Ella performed in her breakout Broadway role that year, her father didn't attend. Officially, he blamed travel and crowds, but insiders whispered a different reason: vanity. Beatty couldn't bear to be seen looking frail and aged, not by the cameras and not by his daughter's adoring audience. Yet, no matter how tightly he tried to seal off the past, it still found ways to reach him. Even Julie Christie, the one who broke his heart back in 1974, remained part of his life. When she and her husband visited Los Angeles in 2020, they stayed at Beatty's guest house. And during one quiet evening, Warren told her she was still the one he measured all others by. That confession cut deep, sparking new tension at home and reminding everyone that even after decades of fame, fortune, and family, Warren Beatty's heart was still chasing ghosts. Julie Christie was his reflection, the one person who truly matched Warren Beatty's fire and depth. He once said she was the one who shaped his artistic voice. And in 2025, sitting alone in his quiet home studio, he reportedly murmured, "She's still the ghost I can't shake." Even after all those years, her shadow lingered. Their story had started back in 1966, right after the Royal Command performance in London. For almost a decade, they were Hollywood's golden creative duo, glamorous, brilliant, and impossible to ignore. Together, they made McCabe and Mrs. Miller in 1971, a haunting Western that critics still call a masterpiece, and then Shampoo in 1975, a scandalous hit that blurred the lines between art and real life. But behind the fame, their love story was unraveling. Beatty wanted stability, marriage, family, something permanent. Julie Christie wanted freedom, independence, and space to create on her own terms. In the fall of 1974, she ended it with a single phone call that shattered him. Warren was so desperate to keep her that he even offered to pay her alimony if they split, despite the fact they'd never been married. She refused without hesitation, saying she never wanted to be owned. That line stuck with him forever. Their final collaboration came with Heaven Can Wait in 1978, the project that earned Beatty 4 Oscar nominations and cemented his legacy. But on set, the magic was gone. The air between them was thick with tension. The crew could sense it instantly. They barely spoke, avoided being alone, and performed through the ache of what they'd lost. When filming ended, so did their partnership, both professional and personal. They never worked together again. But Beatty never truly let her go. Even decades later, she remained the one that got away, his muse, his memory, his unfinished story. In 1982, when Warren Beatty released Reds, he made a quiet but powerful gesture. He dedicated the film to Julie Christie. That wasn't just a line in the credits. It was a confession carved in celluloid. Reds earned him the Oscar for Best Director, the highest honor of his career. But more than that, it was the most personal film he ever created. Julie's name wasn't there for show. It was his way of saying she was still the heartbeat behind his art. Even 43 years later, in 2025, he admitted that he had never stopped loving her. He called her my defiant compass, my final regret. But the past never stayed buried for long. In 2023, another lawsuit surfaced, accusing Beatty of inviting a 14-year-old girl to the Shampoo after-party decades earlier and allegedly manipulating her into months of inappropriate encounters. The case moved forward under California's extended statute law that allowed older claims to be revisited. Beatty denied every allegation, calling them lies-chasing headlines, but the damage was irreversible. In 2025, a judge dismissed the case on procedural grounds, yet his reputation took another devastating hit. By then, Warren Beatty had almost vanished from a public life. The lights that once followed him everywhere had dimmed. Friends said he spent his days locked inside his Los Angeles home, writing notes, replaying old film reels, surrounded by trophies and ghosts. The legend who once commanded Hollywood now lived in silence, lost in the same stories he used to bring to life. And in those long, quiet nights, he still imagined the one movie he never made, the one where time never caught him, where Julie Christie never walked away, where his face never aged. A story without endings, without regret, just love frozen in the glow of the spotlight. If you were moved by Warren Beatty's untold story, make sure to like, subscribe, share, and drop a comment below. We want to know what you think about the man behind Hollywood's greatest myths.